Hello and welcome. This is Working Class to World Class. But before we go any further, I do have a little favour of you. If you could hit that follow or subscribe button, then that would be a massive help. Thank you. And in this episode, I'm catching up with a lady who was born in Cardiff. She then became one of the biggest legends in rugby. She's absolutely amazing. She's a really nice person, very candid, and I'm sure you are going to love her story. Breaking through the barriers of adversity. I'm Lynn Lester, and this is Working Class to World Class. So Megan, thank you so much for being part of Working Class to World Class. I really appreciate your involvement.
No worries. Thank you for having me. I think it's good to get out there and speak, definitely, for sure. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Not at all. It's funny, before this interview, I actually was telling some of my family, and they're like, oh my God, she's really cool. And so there you go, you've got some fans.
Oh, that's cool. Appreciate that.
It's always nice. It's always nice. So for anyone that doesn't know who you are, which I'm sure lots of people tuning in will have a very clear idea, but could you just give everyone an update on who you are?
Yeah, Meg Jones, I'm 26. I'm originally from Cardiff. I started playing rugby when I was 6. Played most of my rugby there, but then obviously headed over to England as well then to play because my mum's from Bristol. So I played for England and yeah, kind of worked my way through the ranks. Did a lot of 15s, and then I've been over in the 7s since 2018. So got my first 15s cap in 2015 against New Zealand. And then, yeah, got myself involved in the 7s mainly. Went to Rio as a travelling reserve quite young. I think I was only like 19. And then at the age of 20, we were at 2018 Commonwealth Games and managed to get a bronze. So that's kind of one of my big accolades, which I enjoyed. That was a good time. And yeah, so since then, just been chasing the Olympic dream of getting a medal and being the first Team GB Rugby Sevens women to get a medal. So yeah, we've got Paris next year, which is the big one. And that's kind of it in a brief summary. I guess I spoke about more of my career, but yeah, that's me really.
That's you. Do you know, it sends tingles up my spine when you talk about, you know, how you've worked through the ranks and how you've got these trophies. And so I used to do martial arts for years and years. And I used to always love it. I used to get emotional when I used to see kids going up, especially kids getting their trophies. And I just had a sense of pride, although I had no idea who they were. So yeah, I just from afar, I can sense what that means to you. And obviously what it must mean to your family. They must be so proud.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, you know, you work so hard such early on. Like I've been playing since I was 6. Obviously at the time, I didn't think I was going to be professional or whatever. And to be honest, I thought I was going to be playing for Wales. I think that was the biggest one. But yeah, like I feel like I owe so much to my mum, my dad. Like my dad used to drive me everywhere. But even my brothers and sisters as well. Like my brother and sister used to get involved so much. And the reason I started playing was because my brother was playing as well. So yeah, family's a huge part of it, isn't it?
Yeah, no, they're amazing. And we are going to go through your story because it's pretty remarkable. But I want to thank you for joining today, especially because you've just been training, haven't you?
Yeah, we just finished some training. It's actually quite a big day today. So yeah, we had 2 rugby sessions and then just finished our gym. Yeah, we're up in Largs in Scotland. So I was going to say like sunny Scotland, but it's looking very dark out there. However, I do have a good view of the sea. So I cannot complain.
Absolutely. Well, it is a bit, as we would say, it's a bit dreek today. Pity you just weren't up the road. You could have come for a wee cuppa. We could have done this in person.
Exactly.
So, let's go back to where it all began then. So where were you brought up?
In Cardiff, originally in Cathays Heath area. And yeah, that was kind of my main upbringing. I went to a fluent Welsh speaking school. So from a young age, I went to nursery and then did my secondary school then in Glantaf, which is kind of it's kind of a rugby academy now, but it has a lot of prestigious like alumni that have come through and played rugby. So like proud to call that like a secondary school because I played a lot of my rugby there as well. So yeah, it was just kind of a classic Cardiff upbringing, I guess. But despite, I don't know, speaking Welsh in Cardiff isn't that common. But yeah, it was just, you know, me, my dad, my mum, and my brother and sister, my older brother and sister. So yeah, we all spoke Welsh, and my mum and dad didn't quite click onto it.
I know, I can imagine it'd be quite difficult. I mean, I'm pretending as if I know what it's like. No, I don't speak a word. I can't talk Gaelic either, so there you go.
Oh no.
So
yeah, no.
Yeah, you enjoyed it though.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was, you know, growing up, I was always like different, very sporty, in like a bit more boisterous than the others, some would say, the tomboy. And I think, yeah, that just kind of played into my favor. Sometimes I just didn't understand why I was different. But, you know, I think it definitely played an advantage to mine, because that's how I play on the pitch now. You know, I'm quite boisterous, I'm quite confrontational. And that's just how I was growing up. You know, I never shied away from a challenge. I never shied away from trying something different. I had always had a need to achieve. Like, it wasn't a case I wanted to avoid anything. And I think that was just how I went in with it. And my dad always used to say, you know, what you put in is what you get out, and that was with anything. So, yeah, no, definitely enjoyed my upbringing. I had a good upbringing. Yeah, some barriers along the way. You know, being the only girl playing rugby, that was always going to be a bit difficult. And I think it was just about sticking. Like, my dad was huge in, I guess, my mindset around things. And he was like, look, doesn't matter what you are, where you come from, who you look like. It's about what you do on that pitch. And I think that's always just stuck with me.
Yeah. Well, your dad sounds like a wise man, because I
Yeah.
totally agree. And all the guests, you know, I've had on very much have the same sort of story. And a lot of people actually have been influenced particularly by their parents, whether it be their mum, their dad, or their aunt, or whatever it might be. So it's really interesting you should say that. And one of the things I wonder, you know, you were saying like you knew you were different. So you used that phrase, I knew I was different. But can you delve into that a bit more? What do you mean by that?
So I always used to wear, like, I'd never used to wear like the skirt that was given to, it was very minor, but there was always like a school skirt. Girls had to wear the skirt, boys had to wear the shorts, and I would wear the boys' shorts just because that was how I was. That was my comfort. So I knew I was different in the sense I was female, but I had almost like masculine traits. And I think I was the only girl that wanted to get involved in all the sporty stuff, football, or all the boys' sporty stuff. So I was always the odd one out because I had long hair, or, you know, I was a girl. But it didn't phase me for some reason. I don't really know why, because I guess my presence was, I just got stuck in. There wasn't any whining. I wasn't putting out my differences. It was kind of like, look, get involved. People had comments. So, you know, they always used to throw comments around, oh, why is a girl playing? Or I'm not playing if a girl's playing, which is very interesting. But bottom line is, I think if you're good enough, isn't it? It doesn't really matter what gender you are. So yeah, that was kind of, I guess, the main point. I've also always had this husky voice, so it didn't play into my hands either. So people always be like, oh, you sound like a boy, you know, you look like a boy, you sound like a boy. And I was like, well, I'm a girl, so just a bit different to your usual stereotypical girl. And I've learned to love that. There's definitely a stage in my life where I guess when I was like 13, 14, kind of transitioning into that being a teenager, and I was fighting to be someone who I wasn't. And I think that was not sad, but I guess a bit of a dip in where I was when I was playing rugby as well, because I was questioning, should I be playing rugby? Like, is that gonna detriment my femininity and not be a girl? But now I've learned, actually, some days I feel masculine, some days I feel feminine, and that's just how it works, you know. And I feel comfortable feeling like, or looking more masculine, if you want to put a gender on it. And, you know, some days I do want to be feminine and look girly. So I think that's where I've come to learn to love myself a little bit, is that I can be those types of people, and I think that's normal.
Yeah, you can be who you want to be, and you know, power to you, because who gives a shit what other people think? You know,
Exactly.
you are you. And then can you imagine the kids now? I can imagine the boys or whoever said that to you. You're like, yeah, you told me not to play back then.
Yeah,
Look
yeah,
at me
yeah.
now. So that must feel like really nice. And you look back and think, you know, you maybe didn't feel as wanted at first. Obviously, I'm sure you kicked their ass and you were really good. And then they're like, oh my God, better not mess with her. And so you growing up then, so tell me a bit about it, outside of sport. So like, you know, you're growing up with your siblings and your parents. What was kind of like everyday life like? And I know you said it was a nice upbringing, but obviously living that working class life. I mean, I understand, I've been there, done it, still doing it. You know, talk me through a bit about that.
Yeah, I think, you know, it was just, my mum worked night shift, so she was a nurse. So, and my dad was self-employed. So a lot of it, I just remember, you know, my mum really trying to juggle the work and also sleeping, because we were obviously back at like 3 o'clock after school I was going to tennis or like all these other after curriculum activities. And I just knew that she was doing everything she possibly could to help facilitate my want to be sporty. Same with my dad, you know, he used to rush home and we straight in the car, get on with it. And it was just, yeah, I guess just constantly on the move. And I think it was kind of good because it just kept you occupied. And if I wasn't doing that, you know, I was down the park with the boys playing football until the lights were gone. My dad always had a rule that I was home before the street lights came on. So yeah, I just remember being like 10, 11 around the park or like just, I don't know, roaming the streets a little bit, causing a bit of havoc. And I knew I had to be home before the street lights came on. So yeah, that was kind of day to day really. And yeah, just I guess with my brother and sister as well, just fighting lots. And I remember there was a cut-off point where we just stopped arguing, as siblings do. So yeah, it was just, I guess, chaos a little bit in the house, particularly with 3 kids, and my mum trying to balance sleeping and work at the same time. My dad being out all day and work as well. So yeah, it was definitely chaos, but it was manageable, definitely. But it was all about how we could just work together. I guess that was a big part of it. Work together and make sure that we're, in essence, doing what we need to do and fulfill the day.
Yeah, it's all about survival, mucking in. I mean, I know what that's like. I'm the youngest of 7 children, but when I was born, they were older. So I was kind of almost like an only child, but kind of not. Some of them had already been married out the house. But I love the chaos, like the working class family, you know, everybody bails in. There's loads of noise. I don't know what it was like in yours. In ours, you had to speak really loudly to be heard. You never got off a chair. If you got off a chair, someone's going to nick that chair.
Yeah.
So is that sort of chaotic? So I'm totally with you. I understand. And one of the things you were saying about the running around. So my son, he's going to be 21 in 2 weeks.
Nice.
I know what you're thinking. Don't look old enough, clearly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I say that to make myself feel good. But the thing is, I remember when he was into football, so he didn't make it as a professional. He just played amateur, like kind of team, you know, round the area football. And he was great, like, but we used to be in the football fields for hours, like freezing. You'd have the hot chocolate and you'd literally be like this, your feet would be frozen, you'd have to go for a shower when you come home. So, you know, it must have been like that. Did your parents always go and watch you before you know, became like really special at the sport?
Oh. Yeah, my dad was huge, like, because he used to drive me everywhere. Because my mum, of course, was working late nights and coming home, working overtime, all sorts. So my dad was a bit more flexible on the weekends when he could take me to rugby. And he loved it as well because where we played rugby was in Ely, which is actually quite it's quite a rough area where it's quite low low socio-economical income. So actually there was quite a lot of it was community driven. There's quite a lot of kids that, you know, really came from disadvantaged backgrounds. But that clubhouse, Club Organ Wanderers, was where we played. That clubhouse was almost like a safety net for those kids. And those are the kids I was playing with. So I just remember, like, you know, everyone being like, oh, who needs a lift home? Anyone, have you got enough food? Is there enough water? Right, okay. Like, it didn't matter if that was my mum or my dad. Like, I was getting looked after by, you know, someone else's parents. And I think that was what I love so much about rugby. I played all these sports: tennis, football, rugby. I played a bit of netball, hockey, but rugby was the only one that really gave me that sense of community and also feeling a part of it. Because yes, they questioned that I was a girl, but they also didn't care because I did what they needed me to do on the pitch, and they started to respect that. And I think that was really endearing and something that I hold deeply now. And I almost give credit to them for my career as well, because I wouldn't have been where I am today without their support of just accepting it. And I think that's really important. So yeah, there was an ample amount of times where, you know, I was covered head to toe in mud, and my dad's putting bags in on his leather seats in the car, and he's like, right, don't touch anything. So I'm just sat there with the seatbelt on, not allowed to touch anything so I don't make it all muddy. And you know, he'd be sat there and we'd drive hours upon hours to get to some of these places. And you know, he would be sat there in the freezing cold, just having a good time. Like, obviously he was just loving it as well, because I think he had that community feel. as I transitioned over to the women's game, so as I had to play for the girls when I was 13, things got a little bit different because we were in Cardiff, but all the best competitions were over in England. So we'd have to travel a bit further, like 2-3 hours sometimes. And yeah, I just remember, he'd have this huge flask, coffee full to the brim in it. And we were off, leaving at 6 a.m. sometimes for a 12 o'clock kickoff. And it was just part of it. Like, we didn't question it. Whereas now, if you've got the girls, GB, we have to travel 3 hours. We're going, all right, hold on, where's the coach? Like, it's just so different. It's crazy, But yeah, I think he used to come to watch every game. And to be honest, I think that's why he enjoyed me playing 15s more, because he could watch me more. But with sevens, I travel, Dubai, Cape Town, a lot further for him. So yeah, he would definitely prefer me to play 15s, but he was, definitely my number one fan. And when my mum could come, she would as well. Same with my grandparents. If it was over in Bristol, my gramps, he loves watching me, and he always reads the rugby magazine, but he struggles to get out now. But yeah, he loved it for sure.
Wow, well, we'll give your mum a pass. She was away saving lives. So
yes, exactly.
Know.
And all her hard work and work ethic is something that I've taken from her as well. So I always give my dad the accolade, but my mum, she was an independent woman in her own right. And she was actually the one that told my dad to let me go and play, because my dad said, no, not a chance am I letting my little daughter go and play rugby. And she said, no, let her go. Like, and, my mum, she's quite a strong, independent woman. And I think without her as well, I wouldn't be where I am today, because my dad wouldn't have even let me go to the first training session. So thanks, Mum.
Well, thanks. I know, thanks to your mum too. Because the thing is, it's funny that, isn't it? When I even look at my family, like, we've got Freya, who's my little niece. She's amazing, and she can be tomboy sometimes, and then she can be very girly, and it's just really interesting, because nowadays I think kids have more, parents have more understanding. You are what you are, you'll be how you want to be. Whereas I think years ago that was a bit tougher. It's probably a hard pill for your dad to swallow, because I don't know your dad, but I can imagine he maybe wanted you to do pretty dancing, or so to be on the rugby field, and probably he was worried in case you got hurt, I'd imagine.
Yeah, definitely. I think that was literally the stereotype he had in his head, and he's learned loads along this whole journey with me as well, because we don't get paid the same as the men. We don't get everything and all the luxuries that come with being a professional. And I think he gets taken back sometimes, that when we say things like, I don't know, sometimes you've got to pay for our own meals, or I pay for my own boots still, I think he gets taken back by it, because he's like, well, why should you? Like, you've committed all your life to this. Like, you should be getting the top dollar and all the best things. I said, well, that's part of performance, but also where women's sport is at the moment. It's definitely getting better. Like, we just stopped now and finished the girls' Six Nations, and they had nearly 59,000 people in attendance, which is phenomenal for rugby, for women's rugby. So it's crazy. So it's definitely getting in the right direction, but there are obviously still steep learning curves to come. So
talk me through that, because I can only imagine what it's like. You walk on the pitch or the field, or however you refer to it. You can tell I'm really into rugby, and I have no idea. It's where I grew up, it was mainly football. But you walk on that pitch and you see tens of thousands of people. What goes through your head?
Like, I think just probably gratitude more than anything. Like, wow, like, these people are here to watch me. But once that whistle goes, I kind of, it's all blocked out. It's that same 4 lines across the pitch, and it's just me and the rugby game, the team, ready to play the game. So yeah, it's phenomenal when you get a good crowd, and they're all cheering for you, supporting you, and it definitely gives you a boost. So yeah, it's definitely phenomenal in that sense. And I think the more we can have, the better, obviously, because it supports the game as well, and the individual. But I think people think, I'll watch it on telly, but actually going to the event actually makes a bigger impact. And people always talk about supporting women's sport. So that would be my biggest driver, is actually go to the events and watch it in person, because that promotes the game even further.
Yeah, definitely. And I get there's probably less trouble, I'd imagine, at rugby than there is at football. In
Yeah,
Glasgow, it's, Rangers Celtic, and that was always whenever they played, you weren't ever allowed to go into town just in case it kicked off. So yeah, I think rugby's a bit more, from what I can see, a lot more civilized.
yeah,
And
definitely.
you were saying, like, so obviously you travel the world, right? So you are lucky, but that's because you're talented and you're so good. But you travel to all these far-flung places. What was it like growing up? Did you ever go on like holidays with your family, or what was your kind of trips like then?
Yeah, we went to holidays like the usual. We used to have Haven holidays. I don't know if you remember those, where you got the tickets out of the Sun or whatever newspaper it was. And yeah, we used to go on those a lot because cheap and cheerful. Lot of camping trips. I think I remember my dad we got a camper van once, and we drove all the way to France, and those were the best times. We used to go down to Tenby in West Wales, and a lot of camping trips in the cold. But yeah, definitely love those. And then it's classic Spain and France were kind of the main ones. I remember going to Egypt once as well. But yeah, those were the main ones. I think we did one trip maybe a year in the summer holidays to keep us entertained. Other than that, yeah, it was just a lot of camping trips. And yeah, I love those trips as well because we would go in quite big groups. Again, community feel, being around everyone. We had quite a big group of friends and family. And yeah, those are the days I remember the most. Camping and just getting up early, hearing the birds, baking sandwiches ready for you. And yeah, when it's wet and drizzling as well, those are the times I remember the most.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. We never did camping trips, but we did Butlins. So it was probably
Oh yeah,
similar. So Butlins and Blackpool were the two sort of big
yeah,
holidays. Because my family were older. So when I went away with my mum and dad, it was generally either me or me and my next sister up. And it was just great. It was just really simple. It was your candy floss, your stock of rock, walking
yeah,
along the front. And so when you kind of look, I guess when you look at your world now and you look back then, you think, when you didn't have much, but you still had everything because you had the love of your family, and they sound really, really good people, actually. And see if we go back as well to your primary school or your high school, were you academic? I know you were sporty, but were you academic?
yeah. I not naturally. I applied myself, so it was very much the same ethos. My dad always said it to me: input the output. You get out of it whatever you put in. Like it doesn't like, again, doesn't matter who you are, where you come from. And that was just how I took school as well. Like I was always like just trying to apply, try and learn. But I wasn't like super brainy, but I really did try. So I think that was the biggest thing. And I was curious as well. I think that was always part of what I was, or maybe made me different as well. I was always asking why. If I didn't understand something, I was always asking. I was always first to put my hand up to try and answer, even if it was wrong. And I think that was part of my identity. Just not avoiding failure, just continuously trying something. And if it went wrong, then I just tried again. And if it went wrong, you're always learning from your failures, and I think that's really important. So yeah, it wasn't like super brainy, but I managed. I went to university as well, so I was over in Loughborough. Came out with a 2-1 in sports science. So yeah, I definitely got all the ticks and that needed to pass the criteria.
Yeah, that's, do you know, one thing I love what you've just said is about failure. So did you see the thing? I can't remember. I don't know if he was a basketball player, or I actually don't know what. So I've probably got it totally wrong. But it was the sports guy who was asked by the journalist if he had failed. Did you see that? It was something on the other day, and he
Recently,
was,
yes, did
yeah,
see, yeah.
and he basically said, well, do you feel in your job if you don't get paid rise? Do you feel and I think he used Michael Jordan as an example. He was, when he didn't win this or that, what did he fail? And I just really love the whole sentiment behind it, because it's never about failing, it's about learning. And the fact that, even from a young age, you had that sort of tenacity to think, well, no, I can develop and build. And I think that's really unique and special, because I think a lot of younger people don't have that in them. So, kudos to you for sort of having that in you, even from a really young age.
Yeah, I think it's so hard to pinpoint, isn't it? But people always say, like, just try, like, don't worry if you make a mistake. But you've got so much pride and ego sometimes that you think, oh, no, I can't. But what is the worst that's going to happen? Someone says no, or it's completely wrong, the team lose, we live to fight another day, and I think we can continuously dwell on those bad mistakes or failures that we so to say, or we can see them as lessons and something that we can really build on. And yeah, I think Michael Jordan actually said you miss 100% of the shots that you didn't take, so just take the shots. And I think that came also to my GCSEs. My teachers always used to say, and my dad said the same as well, just answer it, whether you know it or not. Just answer the question, because you might be right, but you also might be wrong. So just never leave it blank. You might as well give it a go, even if you have no clue on what the question is asking as well. So
that is so true. I used to do that as well. And some of the answers I put down, like I always knew they were so wrong, but I was like,
yeah.
oh, why not? You never know. Just like 1 in a million chance that might be right.
Yeah.
But some of the dribble.
Or they'll say like, oh, at least she tried. I'll give her a point. I'll give her a tick for that.
Exactly, just like being a chance or hustling it a little bit.
Yeah.
So see when you're younger then, so I don't know if it's similar to football, and as I say, my knowledge of rugby is limited. I just see what I see on the TV. But like, I know certainly in football when you're younger, you'll get into the local teams, you'll then, you might get coached or you get scouted, then they take you to do. So is it just a sort of similar pathway for rugby then?
Yeah, so I think rugby is kind of a posh boy sport. So a lot of if you're basically in private schools or those that are deemed like with high regard, that's where coaches tend to look. But with the women's side of things, it's very. So let me take you back to when I competed at the Cardiff School boys rugby team. So straight away, Cardiff Schoolboys, that was the name of the team. So it already didn't have a space for me as a female to be in that team. But I had there was definitely a particular type of person that was at that trial. It was those from posh schools or posh clubs that had lots of money, and you kind of knew those clubs at the time. For example, my club, Glamorgan Wanderers, you didn't see many of our faces there. You maybe have a couple, like 1, 2 or 3 of us. But we were definitely the minority in that sense. So yeah, I got there and I remember I was kind of like, oh, okay, wow, this is a bit different. But as I started playing, it didn't matter who I was. It was about what I was producing on the pitch. And I remember afterwards, and I still remember it to this day, but one of the boys, his dad was a big investor into the team, I think, or had a bit of money. And he was meant to go and take the spot. But because I outshone and outplayed, they had to take me. And I saw him, I think, a couple of years ago, and I remember seeing him, and he said, yeah, I was meant to get picked. And I was like, oh, really? And he was like, yeah, but you just played better than me, and they took me. So I was like, oh, wow, it's crazy that how the system works, that it's not necessarily built on if you're good enough. Sometimes they've already got a premeditated, I guess, selection of players based on like their salary or as in how much money perhaps they can bring into the team. So there's definitely that kind of unconscious bias in rugby, I think, still, of picking posh boys and trying to keep money in the team. So that was what my first understanding of, actually, I'm not from a rich family, but if you can outwork people, it doesn't matter what you do. So that was definitely a good pat on the back for me, and also my understanding of actually how this circle works. So yeah, in terms of academies and stuff, there are ones for boys from the age of you can go from 12, 13, 14 up. Then obviously you go into more regular training camps and then get selected. But yeah, there's definitely a particular type of boy, because also sometimes you have to have the money to be able to go to these specific schools. I know they do scholarships and stuff now, but you have to have the money so you can get the best coaching, the best facilities, and then also the best scouting as well. So, which is probably a bit different to football, because I think football, you definitely get that the differences in players because of the money that football actually produces, whereas rugby doesn't really produce that much money. So yeah, there is a selection process, and a lot of it's word of mouth. Like, oh, I've seen this good player, let's get them in and see what we can do. But bottom line is, if players can't buy the boots that they need to train or get to facilities, particularly at a young age. I was lucky enough to go to Hartbury College, but again, that cost my mum and dad lots of money, and it was basically a college where you had to stay in the week from Monday to Friday, and it was like an academy in essence. But I had to do that in order to put my foot on the next step, and that was to be involved in the England pathway. And I knew that was going to be best for me, and they did the same. They took the same, I guess, the commitment to go, actually, we need to spend a little bit here for Meg to progress a little bit further, which I guess is sad in some sense, because you also lose a big chunk of players. But yeah, particularly with the boys' side, you get more, I say posh boys, but boys with lots of money that come from private schools. Girls' side is a little bit different. You probably got a bit 50-50 or maybe like a 60-40 ratio, because you get the boisterous girls coming from, your more standard schools, really. So yeah, that's kind of the process around, I guess, picking up players. A lot of it's word of mouth.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, I had heard about the kind of elitist part of it. And, obviously your mum and dad seen something really special in you, clearly.
Yeah.
That they partied with their hard-earned money to put you there. But did they have to sacrifice things to help you in your journey?
Yeah, their time. I think that was probably the biggest one. My mum was working a huge amount of overtime, at a detriment of her own health as well. So I think they definitely sacrificed their whole probably social aspect to make sure that I could go and do what I needed to do. So yeah, I remember my mum used to work like 14 days on the bounce, 12-hour shifts plus sometimes, and she'd be coming home just acting normal. But she could have had patients that had died that night. As kids, you don't understand that bit, right?
No.
You just kind of go, oh, mum's home, like, nice. But actually, she's just been working extremely hard to make sure that we've got enough money to live, be comfortable. And, she's maybe just seen, someone's just pooed on her, or she's had to see 3 or 4 patients die or in critical condition, because she also worked on the neuro ward as well. So she had a lot of brain injuries. So, and she's still working to this day, she's crazy. And she only works nights as well. So again, at the detriment of her own health, to help support the family, that's what she had to do. And it allowed us to have that comfort of, actually, okay, we can let Meg go here because I'm working extremely hard, so that they can have the life that they want to live. So
wow, it's amazing. I mean, your family are obviously very good people, and I'm sure now they look back and go, it was all worth it. But at the time, I can't imagine, without speaking for them, but I imagine it wasn't easy. As you say, they were protecting, that their child, they were working all the hours to afford it, to do this for you. So you must feel I'm sure you always feel grateful for that.
Yeah, like immense gratitude for my family and what they do. And I try and give back to them now. I just, I love being around them as well. So it's definitely a huge part of my journey and the career that I have today. So yeah, immense gratitude. It's unconditional love, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Blood is thicker than water, as they say.
Totally, and that is a working class statement. I think actually, just even from talking to you just now, what I can tell, and I think this is probably what your family are most grateful for, is that you're still really grounded. So you've not become, like them. You've not become something that you're not. You've just remained true to who you are. And I think, any parent, you don't ever want your kids to turn and try and be something else. And one of the things you were talking about, which I kind of had an inkling around, was the kind of rich kids sport. And when you then went in and you were sort of mingling, and you were obviously working with people from that different lifestyle, did they ever treat you different because you were working class?
Yeah, so funny. I can't remember like specific instances, but like it was strange, because I had another friend of mine who was I went to school with him, so we were kind of in the same boat, and we always just stuck together. His name's Jesse, and he's still mates now. So yeah, we always stuck together. But they definitely had their groups and did what they did. But there wasn't specific instances of like, oh, your boots aren't as good as mine or what have you. But it might have been. I might have just gone straight over my head and just thought, oh, okay, cool, let's crack on. Like there's no issues there. But the biggest one was obviously being a female more than anything. I think that was always alluded to, and it was like there was always ones around like, oh, do you fancy him, or like, do you fancy? And I was like, so strange. Like, you wouldn't say that to like another boy. So why would you say that? Like, I'm here to play rugby. I'm not here to fancy the boys, or like. So that was always a bit bizarre, I thought, when they try and wind me up like that. So, but yeah, in terms of the actual money, I think my dad he kept himself to himself. And if we needed to leave because it was, I don't know, too much money being spent, we'd always just go out the back door and go, right, let's go to McDonald's now, because that's probably going to be the best bet for us. So, yeah, there was definitely no specific instance, but there was definitely a difference in like, I always had maybe like not cheaper boots, but different type of boots where they'd have the top end, different type of kit as well. But when you had the same kit, so when we got given our kit, the Cardiff Schools kit, we all look the same. You know, I think that's why uniform's so important, because it just keeps us all on the same level, and there's no differences on who's better, I'm like who's worse. It's same level, we look the same. Let's get the job done. I think let's get on with it, you know.
Exactly. You can't camouflage talent. You know, if you've got it, you've got it. It doesn't matter what you look like, how much money you've got, where you come from. None of it matters, because as you said, when you go on in front of those tens of thousands of people, as soon as the whistle goes, the light switch comes on and you're totally in the zone. Yeah. So no, it's exciting. And again, that sort of makes me tingle, because when I was doing martial arts, you know, the minute I would tie the black belt, your zone's very different, and you suddenly don't become friends. You're friends off the dojo. On it, you're there for you, obviously respectfully, but yeah, you're there to do a job. And so for you then, what would you say, you know, to anyone who's like, you know, from that working class background, and they maybe feel different or isolated, or there's, you know, it could be anything going on in their life. Is there any kind of hints and tips that you think that people really have to keep front of mind?
Oh, I think just being courageous with what you're doing, and like generally being authentic. I think I know it's so cliche, and I think I always think about this question as well, because I always get asked, like, what would you say to your younger self, or someone who's in the same position? And I think you generally have to stick with your guns. Like, I know that's a saying, but you've got to stick with what you believe in and what feels right. Because only you know, genuinely deep down, you know what feels right and what's right for you. And I've always made my own decisions because based on how I feel. And my dad's always said that to me as well. So that would be the biggest one. It's like, stick to what feels right, not what you think is right, because we can really get sucked in the realm of, oh, well, he's doing that, maybe I should be doing that, or she's doing that. But you know, people learn differently, people dress differently, and then there's so many differences that we can actually hound in on as well, to understand that differences are a good thing amongst the group and how it molds. All my best friends are specific and they're very different to me. Some similarities, but the ones and the same with my girlfriend, the ones I attract to are the ones that are, this is going to sound very negative on me, but are very empathetic, kind, patient. Those are probably the three things that I struggle with the most, and my differences, so empathy and probably patience. So I seek that in other people as well. So just understanding yourself I think is a big part of how we can move forward, and self-awareness, but also being open-minded that other people are going to be in different positions as well. So yeah, definitely doing what's right for you, not what's right for other people.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. It's funny, you know, I think I read somewhere where you talked about you're not as empathetic. And what's really interesting is during this, I actually find you very empathetic. So the way you talk about your parents and the way you understand what they went through. So yeah, maybe you're more empathetic than you think.
Reflect on it. No, I am. And I think I'm very empathetic to those close to me, which I've started to understand. So I'm quite a loyal person. So those that are close to me, I keep my circle quite small. They're the ones that I got a lot of time for and I'm empathetic for. Yeah, I guess I was thinking about it in the sense of I've got like high emotional intelligence, maybe, in the sense I can really understand and put myself in someone else's shoes. But yeah, the other bit that ties into is how I am on the pitch and how I want to progress. So I guess there's kind of blurred lines in that sense, because I struggle to to like celebrate mediocrity sometimes, and my standards
Yeah.
are high. But I also need to understand that my mediocrity might be here, someone else's might be here. So it's actually, we'll have different ways of interpreting what mediocrity actually is, because
Yeah.
people's standards are different, right? So that's where my empathy, I think, kind of blurred line goes into.
Yeah, that makes sense. I suppose if you're on the pitch and you knock someone over, too bad.
Yeah. Oh, sorry about that. Yeah.
Sorry, you okay? Let me help you. I'll phone my mum. Do you need help? So, well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun. I've really, really enjoyed chatting with you, because I think from what I can unveil from a lot of this is, I think you've got some, very clear superpowers, and I think a lot of it's down to, and you can correct me if you don't think I'm right, but, I think you're very courageous to the point where you sort of take the advice of your dad around, trusting the process as well. What you put in is what you put out. That kind of hard work, tenacity, being, having the courage to stand by your decisions, to be individual, to be you. And I actually think, and I'm sure lots of people tuning into this will understand very clearly why you're so successful, because I think it's really evident in this. So yeah, thank you for just being really honest and open. And I wish you the best. I hope you're gonna pick up more amazing medals and get recognition.
So no, I appreciate you having me. Like, enjoyed chatting. And I love the authenticity as well and the freedom to speak. So thank you so much, Lynn. Appreciate it.
Oh, no worries at all. All right, take care. Thank you.
Thank you.